What is up, guys? It's James from 𝙊𝙁𝙁𝙄𝘾𝙄𝘼. Welcome back to the channel. First of all, apologies, it's been a little bit quiet over the past week, but I've been away, so that's why that is. I'm back now, so it's a good time to be back because Liverpool have had a pretty big announcement today, and we were ahead of this last week. The last video I put up on the channel, you know, we were miles ahead of this in regards to Michael Edwards' return to the club and also Richard Hughes. And of course, Michael Edwards returned last week officially, and we've had the official announcement today regarding Richard Hughes. So he's in at Liverpool. The official statement, you've probably seen it already, but it reads, Richard Hughes has been appointed as sporting director of Liverpool Football Club. We knew this was going to be the case. Obviously, Michael Edwards has come in to oversee all sporting operations at FSG, which is going to include Liverpool and any sister clubs that FSG might obtain. That is the plan, to bring in some sister clubs, which we'll probably do some videos talking about that later this week. But obviously right now there are no sister clubs, so it is Michael Edwards overseeing everything going on at Liverpool, and under him will be Richard Hughes, working directly with Liverpool as the sporting director. So basically everything regarding player transfers in the summer is going to be done by Richard Hughes, but I'm sure will also be advised by Michael Edwards, and Michael Edwards as well is going to be in charge of implementing the new manager of Liverpool Football Club, which we're going to talk about towards the end of this video in terms of what is next now for Liverpool Football Club after the acquisition of Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes. But before we do that, I did speak about Richard Hughes a little bit on the last video in terms of what he did at Bournemouth and how successful he was, and you know, I won't repeat myself on that. If you didn't see that video, I recommend go down and watch it. I'll leave a link to that video in the description and at the end of this video. But basically what we ascertained from that is that Richard Hughes has got an eye for a deal. Not only a good deal, but also good talent. He brought in some of Bournemouth's greatest talents, and you know, they later went to play for some of the greatest clubs in the Premier League and elsewhere. I mentioned at the time that, of course, we were talking about Bournemouth, and they had a much smaller budget than a team like Liverpool will have. So what he could do there, essentially, his hands were tied a little bit. Going to have a little bit more freedom at Liverpool Football Club. And it's interesting that I mentioned that, because that has actually come up in some news we've seen today coming from Paul Joyce. Michael Edwards sought insight and advice from Richard Hughes when it came to the transfers of 𝙊𝙁𝙁𝙄𝘾𝙄𝘼 and Mohamed Salah. Now, first of all, they're two of Liverpool's greatest players in terms of this current era, in terms of evolving us from what Brendan Rodgers left us with, Jurgen Klopp made Liverpool become. They're two of our greatest signings. Arguably the other one is Virgil van Dijk, and I think it's interesting that Michael Edwards sought insight directly from Richard Hughes. We knew the two were friends, but I think this is a little bit more than just jobs for the boys in terms of Michael Edwards bringing Richard Hughes in. I think this is genuinely a working relationship that hinged quite heavily on whether Michael Edwards would say yes or no to FSG. And I think this is one that it's a recipe for success. It's something Michael Edwards wants to do in order to be successful, not to just get his mate a job. And I think you can see that in the fact that two of the greatest signings Michael Edwards ever made at Liverpool were directly on the back of advice from Richard Hughes. So this is a relationship that spans a lot longer than perhaps some of us realize, and I think leaves a very promising tale for what the future could hold for Liverpool Football Club now that the two of them are working directly together. Paul Joyce goes on to say that Richard Hughes targeted Andrew Robertson at Hull City, Fulham's Harvey Elliott, and pushed for Charlton Athletic's Joe Gomez during his time on the South Coast. He also identified Virgil van Dijk whilst at Celtic and Roma's Alisson. Liverpool's pulling and spending power stopped him pursuing those deals. So essentially, all of our best signings were like Michael Edwards snipes of Richard Hughes' targets at Bournemouth. So basically he had no hope. Liverpool were always going to be able to outspend Bournemouth on those targets. And again, it's also a bigger club. You know, you can attract players much easier at a club like Liverpool than you can at Bournemouth. But again, I think it's very interesting and very promising that all of our, you know, most transformative players, I think that's fair to say, Andrew Robertson, Alisson Becker, Mo Salah, I'll even put Joe Gomez in that list, because Joe Gomez alongside Virgil van Dijk, especially that Champions League winning side, was absolutely massive under Jurgen Klopp. And I think, you know, Joe Gomez's injury set him back a long way. I think this season he's looking much more like the old Joe Gomez. We've got 𝙊𝙁𝙁𝙄𝘾𝙄𝘼 now, obviously, who is the key centre-back alongside Virgil van Dijk. But I think Joe Gomez is probably one of our most influential players this season, certainly with the versatility that he's brought. So huge signing there as well in Joe Gomez. But of course, Roma's Alisson, Celtic's Van Dijk, like these are all huge names that we now know Richard Hughes was scouting at Bournemouth. What this means for Liverpool is that we've, you know, to me, this is a recipe for success. Like, it's exciting. the potential future that these two could have working together when we see what they've actually been doing behind the scenes in the past already at Liverpool. To have them back, I think, is massive. Let's not forget, Manchester United wanted Michael Edwards in and Chelsea wanted Michael Edwards in. You've seen the state of both of those clubs in terms of the money they've been spending, the players they've been bringing in, and the mistakes they've been making. There is a very big reason why they wanted Michael Edwards, and it's because of the massive success he's had at Liverpool Football Club, and hopefully he goes on to continue and replicate that success in this new era that we're moving into without Jurgen Klopp. Speaking of Jurgen Klopp, I did actually read, just whilst this news from Richard Hughes has been trickling in, that Jurgen Klopp has had a much bigger role since Michael Edwards left Liverpool in terms of who Liverpool bring in, and signings like Luis Diaz, Darwin Núñez and Cody Gakpo were all heavily influenced by Jurgen Klopp. That will no longer obviously be the case because he's not at the club, but also because everything will now be going through Richard Hughes directly as sporting director. And I think it's interesting because those signings, I think jury's still out on a few of them, you know, especially Cody Gakpo, the criticisms he's been getting over the weekend after the sort of aftermath of the Manchester United game. And I don't think Luis Diaz is safe either. Darwin had a very slow start, but you know, clearly the fans have taken to him and he's a huge favourite. But I think Luis Diaz, again, I think the jury's still out on Luis Diaz. You know, I'd like to see him score more. I think he's got it in him to be a world-class player. We saw against Manchester City. His ability on the ball is incredible, but compared to Sadio Mane and what he offered on the left, Diaz just does not post the same amount of goal numbers, even remotely close. So, you know, I do think jury's still out on those signings, and it's interesting because those are three signings that Michael Edwards directly had zero involvement in, and that's going to change going forwards into this new era of Liverpool, whatever that may be. But let's talk about this new era of Liverpool, because I have put in the title what comes next, and what comes next most promisingly is the fact that we will now move on to look for a new manager, and it's going to be all guns blazing on that. We had a little bit of a report from Chris Bascom, who said that Liverpool will now accelerate their hunt for a new manager and have already carried out extensive background checks on their prime targets. Hughes will be entrusted to zone in on the preferred candidate. Now, we already know for a fact that Xabi Alonso is one of those preferred candidates. He's not just a fan favourite, he is one of the preferred candidates. And I think we're going to see that ramp up and up and up now as things progress, because we've now got a plan in place. We've got something to present to these potential candidates, whoever it might be that Liverpool are looking at, to say this is our plan going forwards into the future. These are the players we're looking at. This is where we want to be. This is our roadmap. Previously, we didn't have that because we didn't even have a sporting director. It was so important that we got the sporting director in place so that we go out there and get hold of the next manager of the Liverpool Football Club. And we've done that now. We've got a plan in place, and I think we're going to see this heavily ramp up now. I don't think we're going to hear anything publicly until the end of the season because, one, I think it's disrespectful to Jurgen Klopp, and two, if Xabi Alonso is the prime candidate, he's got his own things going on that you don't really want to interrupt. I'm sure talks will be going on in the background, and if we hear anything, we will definitely update people on the channel, but news I expect is going to be few and far between because I don't think we will hear anything concrete until the season ends. But for now, rest assured that Liverpool will be putting all efforts into acquiring their prime target for manager of Liverpool Football Club now that the sporting director role is fulfilled. So all that leaves me to say is, Richard Hughes, welcome to Liverpool Football Club. And as always, guys, if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave us a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, so you can stay up to date on all of these stories, including the Xabi Alonso story that we will try and update you guys on. But more importantly, now we also know that Liverpool can start looking at targets for the summer. We've had targets previously listed, the likes of Michael Olise, etc. But are they going to be the same now that Richard Hughes is in? What direction might he take the club in? It's exciting times. You know, I think it's going to be an exciting summer, not only because of the manager, but because of the players as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date on all of that stuff. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video. Peace.